They locked Earth out. Now Earth owns the lock, the key, and the vault. The quantum lockdown field shimmered around Sol's system like a soap bubble made of impossible mathematics. Dr. Zara Okafor pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching Earth's blue marble spin helplessly behind the barrier that had trapped humanity for 6 months. The field stretched in all directions, a perfect sphere of energy that made hyperspace travel impossible within a light year of home. "Still no response from the Galactic Transit Authority?" asked Commander Devin Reeves, his reflection ghosting beside hers in the window. His weathered face showed the strain of 6 months spent preparing for a war nobody wanted to fight. Zara shook her head, auburn hair catching the reflected light from Earth below. "Radio silence. Whatever the hegemony told them about us, it was convincing enough to cut off an entire star system." She turned away from the view, her dark eyes hard with determination. But they made one critical mistake. Devin raised an eyebrow. At 53, he had commanded humanity's deep space operations long enough to recognize that particular tone in Zara's voice. It usually preceded something that would either save them all or get them spectacularly killed, which is, "They locked us in here with our best minds and our worst grudges." 6 months earlier, humanity had been the newest member of the galactic community, eager to trade and learn from species that had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries before Earth discovered fire. The Zarathi hegemony had welcomed them with open arms and flowery speeches about interspecies cooperation, right up until human archaeologists discovered something inconvenient on a dead world in the Vega system. The ruins weren't just ancient, they were human. Not humanoid, not similar to human, genuinely, genetically, impossibly human, complete with DNA samples that matched Earth's population and star charts pointing directly to Sol. The implications were staggering. Either humans had somehow colonized the galaxy millions of years ago, or someone had been harvesting human genetic material for purposes unknown. Dr. Amara Singh had been part of the archaeological team that made the discovery. She still remembered the moment when her genetic scanner confirmed what her eyes couldn't believe. The mitochondrial DNA was identical, she had reported to a stunned scientific community. Not similar, identical. These weren't just humans. They were our humans, with genetic markers that developed on Earth less than 200,000 years ago. The hegemony's response had been swift and brutal. Within hours of the discovery going public, humanity was branded a contaminated species with false historical narratives. Every human ship outside Sol system was impounded. Every human diplomat was expelled. Trade agreements were voided. Cultural exchanges were terminated. And then came the lockdown, a quantum barrier that sealed humanity into their own star system like insects in amber. 14 billion people, Devin muttered, looking out at the barrier that had become their prison, trapped like rats in a cage. Rats, Zara said with a thin smile, are remarkably good at getting out of cages. She led him through the corridors of Orbital Station 7, humanity's largest space-based research facility. Before the lockdown, it had been a peaceful place where scientists studied exotic matter and experimented with theoretical physics. Graduate students had conducted thesis research on quantum mechanics, while their professors debated the finer points of hyperspace theory over coffee in the observation lounges. Now it looked like a fortress preparing for war. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on walls that had been reinforced with salvaged hull plating. Research labs had been converted into weapons development centers. The peaceful academic atmosphere had been replaced by the focused intensity of humanity's greatest minds working toward a single goal: freedom. In the main laboratory, Dr. Kai Nakamura looked up from a device that hummed with barely contained energy. His usually pristine lab coat was stained with grease and quantum flux residue, and his normally perfect hair was disheveled from countless hours spent bent over complex equations. The device on his workbench resembled a metallic flower with crystalline petals, but energy patterns danced across its surface in colors that human eyes weren't designed to perceive. "Zara, perfect timing. I think we've cracked it." His voice carried the manic enthusiasm of a researcher who had just solved an impossible problem. Devin frowned, studying the device. "It's beautiful, but what does it do?" "It's a quantum resonance mapper," Zara explained. her voice carrying the careful precision of someone who had spent months developing theoretical frameworks. The lockdown field isn't just a barrier. It's a complex mathematical structure with very specific harmonics. Like a song, but instead of sound waves, it uses quantum fluctuations in hyperspace. If we can map those harmonics, Kai continued, pulling up holographic displays that showed the field's intricate structure, we can understand exactly how the field operates, its frequency patterns, its power requirements, its weak points. Devin felt a chill of possibility. The implications were staggering. You mean we could find the frequency that turns it off? Better, Zara said, her smile taking on a predatory edge. We could reverse engineer the entire system, understand it completely, improve upon it. Devin understood immediately. If they could crack the lockdown technology, humanity wouldn't just escape their prison. They would become the galaxy's new jailers. You mean we could build our own lockdown fields? Better, Zara repeated. We could build better ones. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and breakthrough discoveries. Humanity's greatest scientific minds worked around the clock, driven by a combination of necessity and righteous anger. The station's corridors buzzed with activity as researchers moved between labs, sharing data and building upon each other's work with the kind of focused cooperation that only emerged during existential crises. The hegemony had made the mistake of assuming that a species barely 2 centuries into their industrial age couldn't possibly understand quantum field manipulation. They had locked humanity away like children being sent to their room, never considering that those children might spend their time learning to pick locks. They were catastrophically wrong. Dr. Amara Singh made the first crucial breakthrough while analyzing tissue samples from the vegan ruins. Working in a lab that had been converted from a botanical research center, she spent 18 hours a day running genetic comparisons that would have taken years under normal circumstances. Her team had expanded the original analysis, comparing the ancient DNA to samples from populations across Earth. The human DNA isn't just similar to ours, she announced during a packed briefing in the station's main conference room. Every available scientist, engineer, and technician had crowded in to hear her results. It's identical, down to the mitochondrial markers that developed on Earth less than 200,000 years ago. The implications hung in the air like a thundercloud. If ancient humans had somehow reached Vega millions of years ago, they had done so with technology far beyond what Earth possessed today. And if that technology had been lost, maybe it wasn't lost, suggested Dr. Yuki Sato, the station's quantum archaeologist. Her specialty involved using advanced sensors to analyze ancient structures without disturbing them, a field that had seemed purely academic until 6 months ago. Maybe it was hidden. That suggestion sparked a frenzy of research as teams across the station began reanalyzing every piece of ancient human architecture they could access through Earth's archaeological databases. If their ancestors had possessed advanced technology, traces of it might still exist in places that conventional archaeology had overlooked. Dr. Chen Wei, a computational archaeologist, spent 3 days running pattern analysis on ancient structures from across Earth. His algorithm searched for mathematical relationships that might indicate advanced engineering hidden within seemingly primitive constructions. What he found changed everything. There are quantum resonance signatures in these structures, he announced during another emergency briefing. His holographic displays showed ancient pyramids, stone circles, and megalithic constructions from dozens of cultures. The placement isn't random. These sites were positioned to create specific harmonic frequencies in local space-time. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ancient humans hadn't just possessed advanced technology, they had built it into Earth itself. The planet was covered with the remnants of a quantum communication network that had operated for millennia, before being abandoned or forgotten. That night, Zara stood alone on the observation deck, staring at Earth's familiar continents with new understanding. Somewhere down there, buried in ancient sites that humanity had barely begun to explore, might be the remnants of a civilization that had once spanned the galaxy. The hegemony clearly knew about it. The question was, what had happened to those ancient humans, and why was their modern discovery so threatening? Her contemplation was interrupted by Kai's excited voice over the intercom. Zara, you need to see this, now! She found him in Lab 7, standing before a holographic display that showed the quantum lockdown field in three-dimensional detail. But now the field looked different, less like a barrier and more like a map. Complex mathematical structures flowed through the projection, revealing patterns that spoke of incredible sophistication. "I've been running deep resonance scans for the past 6 hours," Kai explained, his hands dancing over the controls with practiced precision. "The field isn't just keeping us in, it's keeping something else out." He highlighted a section of the display where the field showed strange fluctuations, areas where the mathematical structure seemed to be straining against some external force. Devon arrived as the display shifted to show long-range sensor data. The quantum mapper had been detecting anomalous readings from beyond the field's boundary, signatures that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. "What are we looking at?" "A fleet," Zara said quietly, studying the sense readings with growing alarm. "Hegemony ships, lots of them." The tactical display showed over 300 vessels approaching Sol System's outer edge. The sensor profiles revealed the distinctive energy signatures of hegemony technology. Dreadnoughts with weapons capable of cracking planets, carriers loaded with atmospheric processors, and support craft designed for planetary occupation. It was enough firepower to sterilize every world in the system twice over, with enough left over to eliminate any evidence that humanity had ever existed. "They're not coming to negotiate," Devon observed grimly. His military experience told him exactly what this kind of fleet composition meant. "No," Zara agreed, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who had spent months analyzing alien technology. "They're coming to eliminate the evidence, along with everyone who's seen it." The next morning brought an unexpected transmission from the approaching fleet. The station's communication systems detected an incoming signal on standard diplomatic frequencies, the first contact they had received from outside the system since the lockdown began. Admiral Thexitar of the Hegemony appeared on the main screen, his serpentine features twisted with what might have been smugness or disgust. The Zarathi were one of the galaxy's oldest species, with a civilization that spanned tens of thousands of years. Their military technology was legendary, their diplomatic corps was feared throughout civilized space, and their capacity for casual genocide was well documented. "Humans of Sol System." His translated voice carried the weight of absolute authority, with undertones that suggested this was not a conversation but a pronouncement. "You have accessed forbidden knowledge and made claims that threaten galactic stability. Your species will be relocated to a more suitable environment where you can develop naturally, without contamination from false historical narratives." Devon stepped forward, his military bearing evident even in the face of overwhelming odds. "And if we refuse?" Thexitar's response was a sound that the translator couldn't process, something between a hiss and a laugh, carrying implications of violence that transcended language barriers. "Refusal is not an option. You have 72 hours to prepare your population for transport. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Everyone present understood what appropriate force meant when spoken by a hegemony admiral commanding a fleet of that size. "Relocated," Dr. Singh said flatly, her voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone trying to process an impossible situation. "They're planning to move 14 billion people to some prison world." "If we're lucky," Devon muttered. His experience with military euphemisms told him that relocation often meant something far more permanent. "More likely they'll just eliminate us and claim we never existed." Zara studied the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. 300 ships against humanity's handful of orbital stations and outdated defensive platforms. By any rational calculation, Earth was doomed. The hegemony possessed technology that was centuries ahead of anything humans could field. Weapons that could destroy cities from orbit, and the casual ruthlessness of a species that had conquered half the galaxy. But Zara had never been particularly rational. "Kai," she said quietly, her voice carrying the dangerous calm that preceded her most audacious plans. "How long would it take to reverse the polarity on our quantum resonance mapper?" He blinked, his mind immediately grasping the implications of what she was suggesting. Reverse the polarity? That would turn it from a detector into a projector. But the power requirements would be enormous, and I have no idea what would happen if we... He stopped mid-sentence as understanding dawned. Oh my. Exactly, Zara said with a grim smile. If they want to play with quantum lockdown fields, let's show them how it's really done. The next 60 hours were a masterpiece of human engineering improvisation. Every available scientist, engineer, and technician worked to convert the station's research equipment into something unprecedented in galactic history. The quantum resonance mapper was connected to the station's main reactor through a jury-rigged network of superconducting cables and exotic matter containment fields. Dr. Nakamura ran final calculations while drinking his 15th cup of coffee in 18 hours. His bloodshot eyes tracked complex equations that filled multiple holographic displays, checking and rechecking power flow calculations that could either save humanity or vaporize half the solar system. The power surge is going to overload half our systems, he warned, and we'll only get one shot at this. One shot is all we need, Zara replied, watching the tactical display. The hegemony fleet had reached the lockdown field and was preparing to deactivate it. Their ships hung in space like predators gathering around wounded prey, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Thextar's face appeared on screen again, his features radiating the confidence of someone who had never been seriously challenged. Your time has expired, humans. Prepare for... His words cut off as every sensor on his flagship registered an impossible energy reading from the primitive space station orbiting Earth's moon. The quantum resonance mapper, now reconfigured as the most powerful field projector in galactic history, erupted with brilliant light that could be seen from Earth's surface. But instead of creating a simple lockdown field, the device did something far more sophisticated. Using the harmonic frequencies that Kai had mapped from the original barrier, it created a cascading quantum resonance that didn't just block hyperspace travel, it took control of it. Every ship in the hegemony fleet suddenly found their navigation systems responding to signals from Earth. Their hyperspace drives were no longer under their control, their weapon systems were locked out, and their communication arrays were broadcasting surrender codes on every frequency. What is happening? Thextar demanded as his fleet began moving in patterns that defied his orders. His 300-ship armada was dancing to Earth's tune, performing maneuvers that he hadn't authorized, while his bridge crew struggled helplessly with controls that no longer obeyed them. On Orbital Station 7, Zara smiled as she watched 300 warships perform an intricate ballet around Sol's system. The quantum field projector was operating perfectly, using the hegemony's own navigation protocols against them with devastating effectiveness. We're demonstrating a basic principle of human engineering, Admiral. If you build a lock, we'll build a better key. If you build a cage, we'll build a better door. And if you try to control us... She pressed a button, and the hegemony fleet vanished into hyperspace. Not destroyed, but scattered across empty space in 1,000 different directions. It would take them months to regroup, assuming they could navigate back to civilized space without their compromised navigation systems. Some would drift for years before finding inhabited worlds. Others would spend decades trying to repair systems that had been fundamentally reprogrammed by Earth's quantum assault. We'll show you what control really looks like. The lockdown field around Sol's system collapsed, but immediately reformed with Earth at its center of control. Humanity now possessed the galaxy's most advanced hyperspace interdiction technology, reverse-engineered and improved upon in less than 3 months by a species that the hegemony had dismissed as primitive. But more importantly, they possessed something else, the knowledge that they had every right to be among the stars. 6 months later, Dr. Zara Okafor stood on the bridge of the UES Breakthrough, humanity's first indigenous faster-than-light vessel. The ship didn't just use quantum field manipulation for travel. It could project lockdown fields around any star system, effectively giving Earth the power to grant or deny hyperspace access to anyone in the galaxy. The Breakthrough was a marvel of human engineering, incorporating lessons learned from studying the hegemony's technology while adding innovations that no alien species had ever conceived. Its hull was composed of adaptive metamaterials that could reconfigure themselves based on mission requirements. Its quantum drive could traverse the galaxy in days rather than weeks. Most importantly, its field projectors could control hyperspace travel across light years of space. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Transit Authority. Reported Communications Officer Lin Zhou, her voice carrying barely suppressed amusement. The Authority had been trying to re-establish contact with Earth for months, ever since word of the Hegemony Fleet's humiliating defeat had spread across civilized space. "Put it through," Zara ordered, settling into the captain's chair that had been custom-built for humanity's first interstellar command vessel. The screen filled with the image of Coordinator Velaxi, whose aquatic features couldn't quite hide his nervousness. The Aquari were natural diplomats, skilled at reading emotional undercurrents and negotiating complex agreements. But even their considerable abilities were being tested by the current situation. "Dr. Okafor, the Authority wishes to formally apologize for the misunderstanding regarding humanity's status. We would be honored to restore your full membership in the galactic community." "How generous," Zara replied dryly, her tone carrying just enough edge to remind everyone involved that humanity now held most of the cards in this particular game. "And what about our historical claims regarding the Vegan ruins?" Velaxi's gills fluttered with anxiety, a physiological response that his species couldn't entirely control when under stress. "The Authority has reviewed the evidence and finds no reason to dispute humanity's ancient heritage." "Excellent. We'll be sending research teams to 17 other archaeological sites that our quantum scanners have identified across the galaxy. I trust there won't be any interference?" "None whatsoever. In fact, we would be delighted to provide assistance with transportation, supplies, or any other requirements your teams might have." After the transmission ended, Devon joined Zara at the forward viewport. Ahead of them lay the Vegan system, where human archaeologists were uncovering more evidence of the species' forgotten past. Ancient structures were emerging from red sand, revealing technology that had been lost for millions of years but was now being understood and rebuilt by their descendants. Behind them, Earth's quantum field projectors kept watch over Sol's system, ensuring that humanity would never again be locked out of their own galaxy. The technology had been refined and expanded, creating a defensive network that could control hyperspace access across dozens of star systems. "So what's next?" Devon asked, watching as excavation teams uncovered another section of the ancient ruins. Zara smiled, studying the holographic displays that showed human ships moving freely through hyperspace while alien vessels waited patiently for permission to enter systems under Earth's protection. "Next, we find out who we really are, and then we make sure everyone else remembers it." In the distance, a new generation of human ships moved through hyperspace with perfect freedom, carrying the banner of a species that had been locked out of their own heritage, and had responded by taking ownership of the entire galaxy's door. The Hegemony had wanted to contain humanity's dangerous questions. Instead, they had given humanity the tools to find all the answers. And as any human engineer could have told them, once you hand someone the right tools, there's no limit to what they can build.